Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Algarve circuit. Just outside of Portimao in Portugal, it's the championship race for the fifth round of the 2012 FIA GT1 World Championship. My name's Jack Nichols. I'm here in the commentary box. Hayley Coxon is down in the pits in a fairly hot weather conditions. 26.5 degrees air temperature, 30.7 degrees track temperature. Hottest it's been this weekend so far for any of the major GT1 sessions, and I think we're in for a fantastic race around this Portimao circuit, which, as you can see, well, the track graphic doesn't really do it justice. It is an absolutely incredible circuit. All of the drivers that you speak to say it's one of the favourite circuits that they visit to this year. Very undulating, lots of difficult corners with off-camber corners, camber that helps you in some corners, lots of crests, lots of blind parts of the circuit as well. It really does produce fantastic racing, as well as being very, very exciting to drive on 15 corners, 4.6 kilometres, and there you can see an example. That's the crest coming down over the hill after turn 9, then the left-hand kink at turn 10. It's a fantastic place to watch the cars from. Here's a look at how the Drivers' Championship stands after yesterday's qualifying race. Bartels and Berman lead the championship on 78 points. Steph Dusseldorf and Fred McAvicky are second in their Hexus McLaren on 67 points, but only 2 points behind them after winning the qualifying race yesterday are Marc Basseng and Markus Winkelhock. Why don't we hear from Markus Winkelhock, third place in the championship. He's down on the grid with Hayley Coxon.
Markus currently sat third place in the Drivers' Championship, starting on pole. It's looking good for you so far.
Absolutely, yeah. I hope Marc can do a good start. Yeah, we are just trying to do actually exactly the same like yesterday. The conditions are quite the same. Car was pretty well. The balance of the car was not too bad yesterday, so the speed was good. I just can hope for a good pit stop, and then I hope we end up on the podium as well.
Thank you.
So Markus Winkelhock will be starting, well, Marc Basseng, you can see behind, just putting his balaclava on and then his helmet. He will be starting the race from pole position, and he is third in the championship. It was a strong performance from the Alinco.com Munich Motorsports team yesterday. They've had a little bit of a troubled warm-up this morning in the 38 car. They picked up a right rear puncture in that warm-up session, and as a result they decided to sit out the rest of the session because they didn't have many tyres left. Second place in the championship, Fred McAvicky and Steph Dusseldorf. Fred is down on the grid with Hayley.
Fred currently sat second in the championship. It's going to be some fight to the first corner for you guys.
Yeah, it shows that we must pass the first corner because it's every time tricky. We have also the challenger of the championship on the front of us, and I think so it's good for us, and we want really to try to pass 2 or 3.
Thank you.
It is fantastically exciting that we've got the top 3 in the championship in the top 4 positions on the grid. The other wild card, if you will, is going to be Frank Stippler and Oliver Jarvis, third on the grid in their Audi. But Fred McAvicky and Steph Dusseldorf, after their dominating weekend in Navarra, are second in the championship now. They did move into the lead, but were usurped ultimately at the Slovakia ring by Michael Bartels and Jelmer Berman. They will be starting second on the grid. Jelmer Berman will be starting the Vita for One racing team BMW after they had another strong fight through the field yesterday. Qualifying didn't go well for them. They started the qualifying race in 11th position but managed to bring it back up to second place. So let's hear from the boss of the Vita for One racing team, second on the grid, Michael Bartels.
Michael, the battle for the championship continues. It's going to be a good fight to the first corner.
Yeah, I believe so. The corner is always have potential for some activity, so even for the cars which are not in the front row. So I think it's going to be an exciting start.
Thank you.
We certainly think it will be an exciting start as well. So 3 German brands in the top 3 positions as well. It's very much a bit of German domination this weekend in Portugal. At the back of the grid, we've got the Lamborghini Gallardo of Darrell O'Young. Now, unfortunately, they really struggled yesterday, did the Lamborghinis. They had the pace, but Darrell O'Young's teammate Peter Cox got involved in an incident early on, and that unfortunately put him out of the race. It also brought out the safety car, and you can see alongside the second Lamborghini of Albert von Turnen Taxis, who will be starting that car. They had to unfortunately make an unscheduled pit stop fairly early on in the race, which forced them down to the back of the field. But you meet a better class of person down the back of the field. It's I think it appears this weekend in GT1, but Darrell O'Young will be hoping that he can fight forward and Albert von Taxis he's had more experience. There's Peter Cox just wishing Albert good luck. Albert von Taxis had more experience than most this weekend because he's also driving a GT3 specification Lamborghini Gallardo in the GT3 European Championship, so he's had a reasonable amount of track time. Yesterday was an absolute day to forget for Ferrari, and I'm not even being melodramatic when I say that, because they started first and second on the grid after an excellent qualifying session, but they decided to pit both of their cars at the same time yesterday, and then the car in front, the number 3 car of Tony Verlander and Felipe Salaquada, had engine problems and they couldn't get... Well, let's hear from Felipe Salaquada. He'll tell us about it.
Philip, you certainly started off with good pace coming into this weekend, but you're starting way back on the grid. What went wrong?
Yeah, yesterday we had a good race. The pace was good, just the Mercedes was a little bit quicker, but when we pit we had this problem with the start the engine, so we lost a lot, and in the race now we are standing on the back, so we will see. Let's hope for the good start and to grab some points.
Thank you.
Yeah, they couldn't get the car started, so that meant that Enzo Ede and Francesco Castellacci behind them had to wait until that car was started, so in total they lost about half a minute, which saw them end up 11th and 12th after starting first and second. Porsche are in a bit of trouble today. They're having gearbox issues. Mike Parisi will be starting the number 9 Porsche, but they're having to use the clutch on the downshifts, where normally the paddle shift downshift would do all the clutch work themselves, so they're losing, they think, about half a second to a second a lap with that gearbox issue. So Mike Parisi says he will keep smiling, but it's going to be a tough afternoon for them. 32 is Stefan Otelli. Him and Laurens Vanthoor possibly a bit disappointed after only finishing in 10th place yesterday, especially with their teammates finishing in 3rd. Vanthoor went wide, well, he was punted wide actually early on in the race, which lost him a lot of track position, which didn't help when the safety car came out. Watch out for the Ford GT, very fast, starting in 7th place on the grid, and that's going to be Matteo Cressoni starting that. It's the second quickest car out there, going through the speed traps at 267 kilometers an hour, which is only bettered by the Porsche, which goes through at 269 kilometers an hour, which is 167 miles an hour for those of you still working on the Imperial system. There's Gregoire de Moustier in the second of the McLarens in 8th position. Then the second of the BMWs will be just in front of him in 5th place, Matthias Lauda, starting that Team Vita for One BMW. The Z4 proving to be one of the slowest cars in a straight line, which must be a little bit of a concern for them. Jelmer Berman and Michael Bartels are actually slowest through the speed traps this morning, 255 kilometers an hour for them. So it's going to be a real challenge for the BMWs to try and make up places. Mercedes-Benz usually struggle with their straight line speed. It hasn't been too much of an issue for them this weekend, which they are very, very pleased about. There's the 3rd place car, and that is going to be started by Frank Stippler. Him and Oliver Jarvis are confident they can do a decent job today. They don't think they have the pace to match the race leaders, but how often in GT1 have we seen people getting their pace wrong, frankly? They think they won't have the pace to match the cars in front, but then once they knuckle down to the racing, they usually can. 4th on the grid, on the outside of row 2, will be Fred Makovicky. Watch out for him. A very, very fast starting driver. A very, very fast driving driver as well. But on the front row of the grid, on pole position, will be the number 38, Alinkel.com Munich Motorsports car. Marc Basseng will be starting that machine before handing over to Markus Winkelhock during the mandatory pit stop window. And he is going to be on pole position. His main threat going down into turn 1 will be from the outside of the first row, provided by that Vita for One racing team car of Jelmer Berman. The menacing looking BMW Z4 is a fairly quick starter as well, but as we've said before, straight line speed not particularly the advantage of the Z4. It's more through the tight and twisty stuff that it appears to be strongest. The grid being cleared then ahead of the 5th round of the season. And we've currently got Michael Bartels and Jelmer Berman leading the championship. Fred Makovicky and Steph Dusseldorp in the McLaren behind the BMW on the right-hand side, a second in the championship. And that Alinkel Munich Motorsports Mercedes on the left-hand side of your screen there. The car on pole position is currently in 3rd place in the championship. A lot can change here at the Algarve. And a lot can change with regards to the championship battle. And this hour-long race We'll be getting underway in a few moments' time as the green flag lap begins. The cars head away then from their grid slots. Bit of a slow start for de Moustier. Had a little bit of a panic there for the McLaren, which has had trouble starting all year really, but he managed to pull away in the end. As the cars head down around behind the leading car, trying to get heat into the tyres. Let's have a look at the grid then. It's BMW versus Mercedes on the front row of the grid. Then on row 2, we've got Audi versus McLaren. Fred Macavicki is surely going to make a very quick start indeed. Matthias Lauda and Nicky Pastorelli are on the third row of the grid, ahead of the first Ford GT of Matteo Cressoni. Gregoire de Moustier alongside him in 8th place. Mike Parisi and Stefano Telli make up the 5th row of the grid before the 2 Ferraris. They should be able to slice through the order from 11th and 12th place. And then the 2 Lamborghinis at the back of the grid. Albert von Turnentaxis and Darrell Young starting those 2 cars. So we've got a bit of a mixed up grid from yesterday, it has to be said. And so as a result, I'm expecting to see quite a lot of movement in the opening laps. It's a reasonable circuit to overtake on. If you can get a good run out of the final corner and down the start straight, then you may well stand an opportunity of getting past, because even though if your car is at a disadvantage in the straight line, it probably means it's better through the corners, and the final corner here, turn 16 at Portimao, is one of the most demanding corners anywhere that GT1 will visit this season, really. It is a fantastic corner. This is the dip that we spotted earlier in the pre-show, down towards the left-hand kink at turn 10, which then brings you back up the hill. The right-hander at turn 11 is a bit of a non-event. You just use it to get the line correct going into turn 12, which then brings you back down once more. A real circuit of ups and downs. Drivers describe it as a roller coaster ride, and Marc Basseng gave me a ride around the circuit on Friday morning, it must have been, in the leading car, and it literally did feel like a roller coaster. It was absolutely an incredible circuit to drive. Many of these drivers listed as one of their favourite circuits, and many of them here for the first time with FIA GT1. There's the 2 Ferraris then. What can they do? It's going to actually be Enzo Ede starting ahead of Tony Villander, so Ede on the inside line, Villander on the outside line, as they come through the very steep exit of turn 16, the 5th round of the championship. The 1-hour race is about to get underway. The leading car pulls into the pit lane. This is the view back from the Mercedes in the mid-pack 37, which is going to be started by Nicky Pastorelli. It's BMW versus Mercedes off the front row of the grid. We go on board with the front row car of Jelmer Berman as we wait for the lights to go green. The 5th round of the championship is underway, and who's going to get the best getaway? It's a good start from the McLaren, looking to the outside, Fred Macavicki, but it's pretty even Stevens. One of the Porsches has gone off, no, it was one of the Ferraris, sorry, has gone off onto the grass on the run down into turn 1, but Fred Macavicki is up into 2nd place. He's managed to get past Jelmer Berman, and there's contact in the middle. Tony Villander goes off, as does Frank Stippler. Another car got involved there as well. I think it's Gregoire de Moustier. Apart from that, they're all safely through the first corner. That's a rear right puncture, I think, for Frank Stippler. He's probably going to have trouble getting that back round to the pit lane. So that's contact in the early corners for Tony Villander in that Ferrari. Now we look on board, back from Nicky Pastorelli. The Ford GT attacking around the outside, but Marc Basseng holds the lead. 2nd place for Fred Macavicki. Jelmer Berman is in 3rd position as they come through the hairpin at turn 6. And how quickly can this Mercedes start to get its tyres up to temperature? It takes a couple of laps to really get into the rhythm of the race, which is why they tend to struggle a little bit in qualifying. That's the 24 car of Albert von Turnentaxis, seems to have made a decent start as well. On board once again with Nicky Pastorelli. Now we look back to Enzo Ede and the 2nd V1 Racing Team car of Matthias Lauda. They're going to be battling over some in the lower reaches of the top 10, aren't they? But Fred Macavicki needs to be careful, because the BMW is right on his tail as they come into turn 14. In fact, the top 3 cars pretty much right together, equidistant between the 3 of them. There's Frank Stippler with his rear right puncture. A real shame after a very positive qualifying race for them. It looked as though Audis might be getting back on track, but that's definitely not on track, is it? He's struggling to keep it on track. In fact, very wide from Marc Basseng out of turn 16. Is that going to give Fred Makovicky an opportunity? McLaren's very quick in a straight line as they come to complete the end of the first lap. There's only 0.3 of a second between them, but here comes Jelmer Berman. He's managed to get alongside Fred Makovicky on the run down into the first corner. It's going to be tricky to hang it on around the outside, and he is unable to ultimately. Did the Ford GT get past the second Mercedes? No, it didn't. But Matteo Cressoni's looking very racy, so Basseng leads, Makovicky second, Berman third, Pastorelli in fourth, fifth for Matteo Cressoni, sixth place for Mike Parisi. He said he was going to struggle in this race and he was just going to try and keep on smiling, but he's going to be absolutely beaming up in sixth position. Darilo Young in seventh, Stefano Telli in eighth, Enzo Eid in ninth, and Matthias Lauda completing the top 10. That's Darilo Young going past Mike Parisi down at the hairpin, so Darilo Young is now up into sixth position. And Mike Parisi really struggling on the brakes with that gearbox issue that I mentioned earlier on. He keeps having to throttle on as he's downshifting. But here's our lead three. Marc Basseng, Fred Makovicky and Jelmer Berman. Mercedes versus McLaren versus BMW, and we are on board with that BMW. Into the right-hander at turn 12. Then we drop down over the little crest before the kink up to 13 and 14. Tony Volander's had some decent contact there on the front right. Haley's down there.
I need an update. Hold on.
So we'll go to Haley in a few moments' time, and we will try and find out exactly what happened from Tony Volander's point of view. But meanwhile, this lead battle is going on still through turn 16, and I think Jelmer Berman, look how much speed he's got through that final corner, but can he carry the momentum out of the corner and find the inside line? Marc Basseng, if anything, looks like he was the slowest off that final corner. The three cars flash past the commentary box. Look how much Berman struggles under acceleration. Basseng is going super defensive down into turn 1. The McLaren attacks to the outside, tries to get the cut back towards turn 3. Basseng is a little bit out of shape, but Makovicky is unable to find a way past just yet. All this is slowly allowing Nicky Pastorelli to come into the picture as well. Back on board with Bartels in this fantastic sounding BMW Z4. They've changed the right rear on Frank Stifler's car, but they don't seem particularly satisfied. Attacking to the outside now is Fred Makovicky. He's looking every which way to try and take the lead of this race, but as yet he's unable to do it, and Bartels has got, Berman has got the best seat in the house to view it from. Left-hand kink at 7, into the double right of 8 and 9. Down a gear, try not to hit that sausage curve on the inside because that'll rip your front splitter off in an instant. Climbing the hill out of 9, a little bit out of shape for Berman, but he keeps it all together over the crest and down into 10. And it's this kind of area of the circuit where the Mercedes seems to just pull away slightly, and then the McLaren is strongest coming out of turn 16. The McLarens are pretty quick. They've got a 265 kilometer an hour run down the straight, so they're only maybe 4 or 5 kilometers an hour down the straight quicker than the Mercedes, but that is enough. And look at this, it's all starting to just stack up a bit behind Marc Basseng, who's desperately trying to find an apex there at 15. He's still managed to carry some good speed out as they come through 16 once more to complete the third lap of the race, and this is going to be a lot of defensive driving now from Marc Basseng. Fred Makovicky goes wide. Basseng will surely move to cover the inside line, but Jelmer Berman's got a very good run this time around. He looks to the outside. He's going to try and be in the perfect racing line for the run into turn 1, but he's unable to quite do it just yet. But the top 4 all now concertinaing up to one another. Quickest man on that last lap was actually Darilo Young, doing a 47.915. So Darilo Young in that Lamborghini, you can just see there in 5th place, is the quickest man on the circuit. There he goes, and he's bringing Mike Parisi with him down into the hairpin of turn 6. Jelmer Berman is going on the attack. This is a really delicate position for Fred Makovicky because he's got to try and attack and defend at the same time. For Basseng, it's fairly straightforward. He just needs to defend and cover his inside line whenever he can. But for Fred Makovicky, and now to a certain degree Jelmer Berman, now that Nicky Pastorelli has joined in, it's got to be very close indeed, and he's got to really keep an eye out both in front and behind. And look at that, in this middle sector the Mercedes pulls out a couple of car lengths, doesn't it? It looks to be fairly safe as we go on board with Fred Makovicky once more into 12. The Mercedes really struggling in front to get any apexes at the moment, but we saw yesterday that the Mercedes race pace came on as the race progressed. But he's still struggling to just get that nose into the corners. And is this a move up the inside into 15 from Nicky Pastorelli? That was always going to be a bit optimistic, but all of a sudden Jelmer Berman has had to look in his mirrors, and as a result has dropped some 5-10 car lengths behind the McLaren in front of him. Darrell Young is rapidly joining in as well. Then we've got a battle between Enzo Ede and Matthias Lauda, but across the line come our leaders, absolutely nose to tail. Darrell Young is now within 2.5 seconds of the lead of the race, and was he the quickest man again on that last lap? Yes, he was, a 1:47.836. Quicker than the race leader. Fred Makovic, again, right up to the back of the BMW, of the Mercedes rather. There's nothing he can do just yet as they exit through turn 5. And at some point there's got to be one of these guys has to make a move, unless they want to follow each other around in the same order. Pastorelli's gone wide, very, very wide. He's lucky that it's a hairpin and that he can get back on the power earlier and then have more momentum coming out of the corner, but he is really pushing hard. That hasn't compromised him too much, fortunately, although it has brought Darrell Young right onto his tail. So Pastorelli in 4th place in that Al-Inkle Mercedes with the yellow flashes, with the 25 Reiter Engineering Lamborghini of Darrell Young behind him. Mike Parisi's doing a very good job actually in 6th place, comfortably holding off Stefano Telli at the moment. And there is Matthias Lauda in the 2nd BMW, still trying to find a way past Enzo Ede. Albert Montana Taxis is 10th, Grégoire de Moustier is 11th, Matteo Cressoni, after getting involved in that first lap incident, is 12th. With Stippler and Verlander both in the pits and I believe out of the race, unfortunately, because they have yet to rejoin, and that was some 3 laps ago they went into the pit lane. So into turn 16. Marc Basseng leading, Fred Makovic in 2nd, but it's down the straights that the McLaren has such an advantage over the Mercedes. This time I think it's going to be the BMW possibly going on the attack. Down they come. Jelmer Berman looks to the inside line, but he just hasn't got the straight line speed to get anywhere near the McLaren once they come over the crest of that hill. And I think the 2nd BMW is finding the same problem. Matthias Lauda apparently quicker through the corners than Enzo Ede, but nothing doing just yet. Marc Basseng then, Al-Inkle.com Munich Motorsports team boss, is having to go defensive there because the McLaren is right with him once again, coming down into the hairpin. Still nothing doing. It's going to be a fascinating race this, because the cars are strong at different points of the circuit. And as a result, there is Frank Stippler. He's obviously still in the car, so let's see if we can see what happened. Down into turn 1, the McLaren was all on the grass on the outside. Then somewhere in here, the Ford gets into contact. Okay, so the Ford got into contact with the Ferrari, or the Audi, I should say, on the inside, but also there was contact between the McLaren and the Ferrari. So the Ford and the Audi came together, and the McLaren and the Ferrari came together. If that's clear enough for you. It's difficult to quite pick out what happened from those various angles, but I think it was something along those lines. It hasn't really affected the lead of the race too much, because the top 3 in the race were all in the top 4 on the grid. The only person it has really hurt is the Stippler Jarvis 33 Audi. They'll be very disappointed with that, because they finally thought, as I mentioned earlier, that they were going to get back into the championship hunt by picking up a decent haul of points here at Portimao. 50 minutes to go. It is that 2nd Audi that is WRT's only hope. Down into turn 1 they come. Again Enzo Ede ferociously defending from Matthias Lauda, who can see the cars in front disappearing up on the road. Is that a bit of damage to the front bonnet of Matthias Lauda's car? I don't think it should be that high up, so he's obviously had a little tag somewhere in the melee. This is the battle over 9th position, 8th position I should say. It's the Ferrari in 8th, the BMW in 9th. It's just started to calm down a little bit up at the front, hasn't it? Marc Basseng was 0.2 of a second quicker than Fred Makovic on that previous lap. Nicky Pastorelli was the quickest of any of them and did his personal best lap of the race, 47.596. Matthias Lauda desperate to find a way past Ede. Into 8 and 9 they come, and you can definitely see that bonnet is just flapping around a little bit. It's not going to affect him too badly, I don't think, Matthias Lauda, but might be a little bit of annoyance out of his window. But now through 10, a little dab on the brakes from Ede as he comes into 11 and 12. A nice wide line being taken in by Lauda. Now that could give him an opportunity perhaps going up into turn 14, which is where our race leaders are already. It didn't though, you can just see in the background that nothing quite came of that. Out of 15, and Basseng has just about, I think, got enough of an advantage because the Mercedes is strong through the final corner. And the McLaren is going down the start-finish straight. So there is Matthias Lauda then. Whitley try and grab towards the inside line. He's got a good run out of the corner. He looks to the inside, but he's not quite able to get past. And the Ferrari coming straight across the front to, jiggling around a little bit, going down the start-finish straight there, Enzo Ede. He's pushing the boundaries of defence, but Lauda looked like he got a decent exit out of turn 1, but nothing doing for him just yet. And this is really costing him because he's lapping in the 1:49.1s, which is 1.5 seconds slower than his teammate up in 3rd position. And once again, Ede goes straight to the inside line for the run down into the hairpin. And Matthias Lauda is going to get very, very frustrated before too long. So, up into the hairpin, let's have a look, see. Ede almost sells the dummy, suggesting he was going to come back, and then he darts back towards the inside a little bit. Nothing too dramatic with the movement, but I'm sure from Matthias Lauda's point of view, Enzo Ede was all over the place, but that'll be racing drivers having different opinions of very similar actions. Darren O'Young's pace has dropped off a little bit after being the quickest guy for a couple of laps early on. And this is going to be the move from Lauda. That's brilliant stuff. Got on the throttle, didn't compromise his exit out of turn 12 and into 13, and he goes past up the inside into 14. I think that's what he tried to line up to do on the previous lap, but Enzo Ede now drops down into 9th position. Great stuff from Matthias Lauda, as I say. I think he was trying to figure that one out a couple of laps ago. We saw it nearly happen, but this time he got great deal of exit speed, so he is now up into 8th place. Across the line comes the leader, Marc Basseng. 8 laps completed. And Yama Berman is starting to get very frustrated now because he's losing about 0.2 of a second a lap all of a sudden to the race leader, because Fred Makovic in front of him is proving a bit of an immovable object in front. So we go on board. Fantastic sounding engine in the BMW Z4, especially on the downshifting. Thwacking down the gears into the hairpin at turn 6. And well, let's see if we can make out where the BMW is quickest. It's on the power, fairly on the apex for that little squirt between 8 and 9. Seems to be pretty good through 9, and the gap has closed in just a little bit, hasn't it? Takes a different line up through turn 11. I noticed that earlier. He, a little bit out of shape on the brakes. Can he get that turned in? He can, but he's not quite troubling the apex as he would have wanted. Up into turn 14. Now into 15. And you can see him trying to take the wider line in to get as much speed out of the corner as he possibly can. But we'll see if we stay on board down the start-finish straight. We'll see the straight line speed difference, because look, the BMW is so much stronger through turn 16, and you'd think, oh, this is my opportunity to get past, but then the McLaren with its extra straight line speed, bye-bye, he's gone off the road, and Berman moves to the inside line, presumably to just try and put Makovic off a little bit, but that's not going to work. The French driver is more experience than to be put off by a little bit of movement in his mirrors. Mike Parisi now is starting to come under pressure from Stefan Ortelli in the battle over 6th place. Matthias Lauda has started to drop Enzo Eid fairly quickly. On that last lap he was 0.6 of a second quicker as we go on board now with Mike Parisi. Let's see if we can hear anything going down into the hairpin. It didn't seem to be sounding too bad on the downshifts, which is where the Porsche's gearbox problems are occurring. Up the hill through the left-hand kink. Yeah, you can hear the downshifts aren't quite as smooth as compared to when we were in the BMW a few moments ago. The BMW downshifts were very crisp and smooth, but the Porsche, it certainly sounds like he's having to put the clutch in and give it a bit of throttle on the downshift as well. So Mike Parisi struggling just a little bit, but he's managing to get by pretty decently, still in that 6th position as he gets chased down by Stefan Ortelli and Laurens Vanthoor. Championship race winners in the opening race weekend. In fact, these are the championship race winners from rounds 2 and 1 respectively. Mike Parisi and Matt Halliday taking the win in Zolder after Ortelli and Vanthoor took the win first time out in Nogaro. Out of turn 16, and it looks like Fred Macavicky's got a decent run out of there. Is he going to be close enough to slowly? The gap has come down to just 0.4 of a second now. That last lap he found 0.3 over Marc Basseng in front of him. Really is a duel up between the top 3. Nicky Pastorelli is lapping similarly, but not quite quick enough to really join in with them. There you saw Frank Stippler. He is back out of the pits, which is good to see. Matthias Lauda just set his personal best lap of the race. Now he's got some clear air, a 48.3, which is quicker than Parisi and Ortelli in front of him. Under braking for the hairpin they come. And here we're seeing, oh, there's a spin for Frank Stippler, and he kicks up the dirt on the inside. He's, with being 4 laps down, he's really just out there, I imagine, for an elongated test session, just to get used to the car a little bit more, see if they can find a few things out about it, because even with the safety car, he'd still be 3 laps down on the rest of the field. So it's game over really for Frank Stippler and Oliver Jarvis after starting in 3rd place on the grid, but it's still worth them going out and getting some laps in. And who knows, a couple of retirements, and they might even be able to pick up a point. They need quite a lot of retirements actually to get into the top 10, but they might just be able to manage it. There's the V1 Racing team with the BMW representatives. And Fred Makovicky is as close as he has been in the previous few laps to Marc Basseng. We're also only 5 minutes away now from the pit stop window, which will open with 35 minutes remaining. It'll be interesting to see when these teams decide to pit their cars. Out onto the start-finish straight once more. On board we go with Makovicky. He's going to go defensive, but he probably doesn't really need to. Well, the BMW is right up behind him this time, actually, and he's stuck in the slipstream as Jelmer Berman, so he's not too far behind Fred Makovicky into turn 1. Makovicky goes a little bit wide, but keeps it all together, but that was better from Jelmer Berman now. Really starting to stick with the McLaren just a little bit. He was the quickest man on the circuit last time around. Apart from Daryl O'Young. Daryl O'Young was 1/100th of a second faster, but certainly in this top 4 battle, Jelmer Berman was the quickest man. And Marc Basseng possibly starting to have his pace slip away from him once more. On board with Makovicky, very natural driving position in the McLaren. You can see him right foot braking down there, then getting back on the throttle, back on the brakes, and then getting on the throttle nice and early just after the apex of 9. You can also see the gear he's in on the little dash readout. 4th gear through that left-hander. Is he going to get it up into 5th? I don't think he is, before downshifting into the right-hander of 12. And, oh well, Frank Stippler, presumably the car has picked up some damage that was more than just a puncture, and that's what caused him to spin. Either that or he's decided that enough is enough. But look at these 4 cars really battling for the lead of this race. And none of them are really holding each other up, because if Makovicky's got the straight line speed advantage, so if he was being held up by the Mercedes, he'd just be able to sail past on the straight, but they're just so evenly matched that they're all staying very, very close to one another. Here goes Yama Berman again. Now, it's interesting because you'd think he'd stay in the slipstream right behind the McLaren, and when he did on the last lap, he managed to stay with him. It is hot here today, so there may well be engine cooling issues. Perhaps his team have told him to stay out of the slipstream in order to get some cool air into the brakes and the engine. There's Jarvis and Stippler. Jarvis saying, well, you were miles back, so there was no point really continuing anyway. So whether that was damage or not, we'll find out. But a real unfortunate end to Oliver Jarvis and Frank Stippler's weekend, which had promised so little after yesterday, has promised so much after yesterday's race, after promising so little after qualifying and free practice. Down into third gear, little squirt on the throttle, and then down into first for the tight turn 9. Fred McAvicky bouncing, although it's a very bouncy circuit actually. It's quite surprising. You'll see it through the corners that the McLaren gets very, very bumpy, and that's one of the reasons that the McLaren is struggling here this weekend. Well, it's not anymore because it's up in second place, but certainly early on this weekend, the engineers were telling me that although from a bird's eye view, it's a similar kind of circuit to Navarra, where the McLaren was so strong, lots of medium and slow speed corners where the McLaren can really play up to its strengths. It's such a stiff car that the bumps really unsettle it through the corners, and that's where the speed is lost, which is why we see the McLaren through this right-hander. You'll see him lolloping around as he hits the bumps. There you can see, look how much Fred McAvicky's body is being moved just through that right-hand corner, and even the start-finish straight is pretty bumpy as well. Single-seater drivers get a bit of a headache after driving down there. Yama Berman again nosing towards the inside line, but nowhere near making the move just yet. So Frank Stippler retired from this race, unfortunately, after that incident at the start. Let's see what he has to say. He's down in the pit lane with Haley Coxon.
Frank, what's your views on the incident?
Well, in my opinion, I didn't see it on the TV, but in my opinion it was quite obvious. There was inside of me, I think it was a Ford GT coming from nowhere with his power that he has. And there was no space. We can't go five cars by car through the corner. So he hit me on the right rear wheel, causing a puncture, which we solved for the pit stop. But then he pushed me into, I think it was a McLaren, and the left rear wheel suspension was broken as well. So it was too dangerous. We tried to go on because we tried to score some points just in case of retirements of the others, but it was too dangerous.
Thank you.
Yeah, you could see two separate incidents down there at turn 1, wasn't there? So 15 seconds before the pit stop window opens, it might open by the time they get round actually to complete this lap. So anyone brave enough will possibly dive in if they want to get their driver changed as quickly as possible. I don't think it's too much of a rush for any of them. The pit stop window will open though, so if any of them want to come in, they are more than welcome to. Mike Parisi has managed to fight off the attentions of Stefano Telli behind. Are any of them going to come into the pits this time around? No, they're not. I wondered if Berman might... Pastorelli is. Nicky Pastorelli is going to come in and hand over to Thomas Jäger. So he will try and get a bit of clear air, get some quick laps in and make up a position, and I think that's what Ortelli and Vanthors are trying to do as well. Basseng has taken his lead back out to 0.8 seconds. There's Vanthor waiting for Stefano Telli to come into the pits, and Stefan parks the car goes up on its jacks, and in comes Lawrence Vanthor, a little seat insert for Stefano Telli, who's a slight little man. And we've also got the Lamborghini coming in of Albert Bonturn and Taxis. We've also got Gregoire de Moustier in, Enzo Ede in, and Nick Pastorelli, as we already mentioned. So a few changes going on as out goes Lawrence Vanthor. Not really any... well, he's come out behind Thomas Jäger, so that's exactly what we were expecting, really. Not difficult to make out exactly how much time has been won or lost until the race leaders come in. Smoky start from the number 2 Hexus of Alvaro Parent. What kind of pace can he find, actually? Because Moustier was caught up in that first lap incident. But now Alvaro Parent has a bit of time on his hands, a bit of clear air on his hands. He might be able to make up a few places now. There's the Ford GT. That's already made one pit stop, Matteo Cressoni, but he'll have to make another one because he had to come into the pits after contact early on. He still needs to hand over to Milos Pavlovic later on in the race. So there's our race leader coming out of the final corner. Marc Basseng appears to have just put the hammer down a little bit and started to pull away from the McLaren, because now Jelmer Berman is as close as he has been before. Again, he decides not to stay in the McLaren slipstream, and that sees the McLaren pull away in the straights. I wonder if Berman and Bartels are deciding to wait and let the strategy play this out. Daryl O'Young is into the pits that last time around as well. He's going to hand over to Peter Cox. They could be dark horses, actually, for a bit of a podium finish here, because Peter Cox is going to be very, very quick. Been driving Lamborghinis for Reiter for a good many years now. So they may well be able, from 5th place when they came into the pits, may well be able to sneak into the top 3 perhaps. Still Jelmer Berman unable to find a way past Fred Makovicky. The great thing between these top 3 as well is that they're all evenly matched with their second drivers. I think that's part of the interest here, because Basseng and Winkelhock very evenly matched, Makovicky and Dusseldorp evenly matched, and Berman and Bartels. And they can see just how evenly Makovicky and Berman have been lapping. Less than 1/10 of a second in it for the last 3 laps. It's absolutely top quality driving on show here at Portimao, and Marc Basseng is just edging away. That last lap he was 4/10 of a second quicker than Fred Makovicky. So that's very impressive as they come into turn 15. There is Michael Bartels getting ready. Here you can see actually some of the top speeds, 260 kilometers an hour for the Ford GT, and the Porsche second quickest. McLaren, as you can see, 3rd quickest, with the McLaren in 5th, and you can see that neither the BMW or the Mercedes are even there. There's the BMW in 7th place, with the Mercedes in 8th quickest. So into the pits comes Marc Basseng, race leader, followed in by Jelmer Berman. Berman was very good on the brakes there, because look, he's must probably halve the gap to Marc Basseng coming into the pit lane. Fred Makovicky is now going to stay out and try and set some good laps in clear air. This is going to be the important thing, though. It's going to be, well, the 2 German rivals in the pit lane, Vita for One Racing Team in their BMW versus the Alinkel.com Munich Motorsports Mercedes squad. Alinkel very, very quick with their tyre changes, but Vita for One are no slouches either. This is fantastic stuff on board with Bartels as he watches the tyres being changed. Who's going to get away the quickest? They're on their final tyre. The Mercedes are away, and it's a slow stop for the BMW in comparison. You saw they came in nose to tail, but once again the Alinkel squad doing a sterling job of getting out in front. Equally, they're about to get out in front of their teammates, but their teammates have managed to get past the BMW. But what can Thomas Jäger do, because he's got the momentum? Is Winkelhock going to defend? He can't quite get past Thomas Jäger. Winkelhock is going to defend. The teammate sends it up the inside. Almost contact between them coming down into turn 4, but Markus Winkelhock will be damned if he lets his teammate through. Up the hill, through turn 5 they come, down towards the hairpin. Thomas Jäger knows that he needs to take advantage of this opportunity as soon as possible. If he wants to make the move stick, he sends it to the outside now for the hairpin. And nothing doing just yet. Is that the breathing space that Markus Winkelhock needed? Will he now be able to consolidate the position, which is still the net lead of the race? But don't forget, we've got the McLaren still to pit. We've still got to see where the McLaren comes out when Fred Makovicky comes in to hand over to Steph Dusseldorp, but just about Markus Winkelhock out in front of Thomas Jäger. Very, very close that was. I'm interested to see where Peter Cox is as well, because remember, he was my little suggestion of a dark horse. But here is Fred Makovicky in the pit lane then. The Hexus squad fairly quick with their tyre changes. The Mercedes are battling amongst themselves, though. Is that going to cost them? Will the Ferrari get it started? Look, the Mercedes are side by side. They need to focus on not fighting against each other and working to get out in front of that McLaren, because the McLaren is heading down the pit lane now as they come through turn 15. Fred Makovicky and Stef Dusseldorp may just be about to take the lead of this race. Through 16, out of shape there, Markus Winkelhock, through the very fast downhill right-hander. Here comes the McLaren out of the pits, and Stef Dusseldorp is going to take the lead of the race as the Mercedes come down past it. The time they've lost battling themselves ultimately may well have cost them the win, but here they come. The three of them are going to be right together because the McLaren's still getting his tyres up to temperature. Stef Dusseldorp, this is fantastic stuff. A three-way battle for the lead of this race. Dusseldorp goes defensive immediately. They're line astern. How quickly can these Mercedes try and get past the Hexus McLaren in front? Out through turn 5, they're right under the rear wing. Dusseldorp goes defensive. Winkelhock then has to look back towards the outside. Jäger's going to try and make it 3 abreast, going down into the hairpin. 3 abreast for the lead of the race here in GT1, and just about holding it on is Stef Dusseldorp. Thomas Jäger's got a good exit, has a little look to the inside. That's not going to be an overtaking opportunity. He'll then be on the outside for 8 and 9. But this is breathtaking stuff, because don't forget, Michael Bartels is coming in to join in as well if these three start battling hard. But the long and short of it is, Stef Dusseldorp in the Hexus McLaren has used the strategy to perfection and is now in the lead of this race. Second place is going to be Markus Winkelhock, third is Thomas Jäger, and fourth is Michael Bartels, because Mike Parisi and Matthias Lauda have now made their pit stops. Well, I can't help but think the Mercedes fighting with each other up there in the early stages of that second stint has cost them the lead of this race, and possibly cost them a 1-2 on the brakes into 15. Jäger's trying to stick it around the outside of Winkelhock. Surely he won't be able to pull that one off. He has! Fantastic move from Thomas Jäger, up into second position, around the outside at 15, and now he will set about trying to get past Stef Dusseldorp. Down the start-finish straight they come. The pit stop window will close in half a minute. The Hexus crew watching on. This is some decent straight line speed from Jäger. Look, Michael Bartels is there, all ready to join in. And everyone now has made their pit stops. Mike Parisi and has handed over to Andy Zuber. Matthias Lauda has handed over to Nicky Maunov. But what a enthralling race we have now at the front. I thought it was enthralling before the pit stops. It's just got a whole lot better out through turn 5. The trouble for the Mercedes now is going to be the opposite of the trouble they had early on. Thomas Jäger's going to the outside now, into the hairpin. It's not going to work, but he will have the confidence that he can maybe make the outside move stick. He's got better traction out of the corner. Will this give him the inside line into turn 7? It will, but the McLaren will have the inside into 8 and 9. The Hexus McLaren can't hold it on, and Thomas Jäger moves into the lead of the race around the inside at turn 7, and now will he begin to pull away? There's the Hexus McLaren team. Gregoire de Moustier looking a little bit glum. That's not his car. His car is currently down in 9th place in the hands now of Alvaro Parent. But Thomas Jäger moves into the lead of the race. Markus Winkelhock will now need to get past as quickly as possible, otherwise his teammate is going to be disappearing on up the road. So, into turn 14. The McLaren closes the door. We go on board with Michael Bartels, 4th place then at the moment. Pit stop window is about to close, and everyone has made their mandatory pit stop, so no interest there really. The incident between car 3 and 33 will be under investigation after the race. Stippler and Villander, although I don't think those two actually came together at any point. It was more the two incidents combined on the exit of the corner. Down the start-finish straight, Stef Dusseldorp driving in the middle of the road because he knows he doesn't need to go too defensive because of his straight-line speed advantage. The gap is now 0.8 of a second between first and second, Jäger and Dusseldorp, to go back on board. This time with Markus Winkelhock. Into the hairpin at 4. And then up through 5 and down towards the hairpin, another hairpin. Turn 6. Michael Bartel's not quite able to keep pace with these guys. He's with them, but he's certainly not closing into them. Now, is Winkelhock going to try the same strategy on Stef Dusseldorp here? He might, you know. He's got a good run out. He couldn't quite cover the inside line quickly enough, and he's going to have the inside line into 7. Can Dusseldorp hang it on at 8? No, he can't this time. Winkelhock is through, up into second position. An absolute carbon copy of the move his teammate pulled on the McLaren just 1 lap ago. And Alinkel.com, Münnich Motorsport's Mercedes-Benz SLS are now first and second. Stef Dusseldorp unable to prevent the charge of the Mercedes here. As they drop down the hill. What can Michael Bartels do as well now? That's going to be the interesting thing. Can he start to challenge? Because out of the 4 of these cars, there's an argument that Michael Bartels is possibly the quickest, looking at the lap times from yesterday's race. So there may well be an opportunity for Michael Bartels to get past, but of course he struggles in a straight line more than the Mercedes do. We go on board with him through 16. We'll close in on the McLaren, I imagine. Yep, there we go. But then the McLaren will begin to pull away once more. I wonder if Bartels will stay in the slipstream or whether he pulls out. He's staying right behind the McLaren, and as a result, getting a pretty decent tow. He loses out of it towards the end of the start-finish straight as they drop down the hill towards turn 1. But Thomas Jäger leads this race after 2 brilliant overtakes. One good overtake on his teammate. There are the 2 teammates, Basseng and Pastorelli, unified despite their teammates squabbling out on circuit. Michael Bartels now right up behind Stef Dusseldorp on the drop down into the hairpin. Mercedes-Benz 1 and 2. McLaren MP412C in 3rd position in the hands of Stef Dusseldorp, with this man, Michael Bartels, behind. The Lamborghini of Peter Cox remains in 5th position. That isn't really close enough to close in on the top 4. So let's hear from team boss Marc Basseng. His cars are squabbling left, right and centre.
Mark, some tremendous racing going on out on track there. I guess there's no team orders being given.
No, definitely not. But I think we did the right. The situation was I was in front. Markus fired up the engine a bit too late, or it didn't start really good. It was okay to fight against our team colleague, but we didn't know how quick the pit stop was or will be from the Hexes guys. It was tremendous quick, I have to say, really good. But then we take the decision that Thomas was on the outside and Markus give him some room, and that was good and the right decision. Now we are P1, P2, and just this counts.
And how did you get past the McLaren?
Yeah, I think we are in a good shape, especially what I told already. Last corner is our corner. We come better over the crest for our front engine car, and I hope now that they can keep their positions and the tire will last. But it will be good.
Thank you.
So Marc Basseng standing by the decision to have the 2 Alinkel cars squabble, even though it meant that they came out behind the 2 McLarens. Now here's Nicky Meyer-Melnoff right up behind Laurens Vanthoor. They're coming into turn 4. This is the battle over 6th position. So Meyer-Melnoff taking over from Matthias Lauda, and now challenging Laurens Vanthoor as they a little dab on the brakes from Vanthoor as they come over the hill at turn 5. And Nicky Meyer-Melnoff, him and Matthias Lauda once again not quite performing to the same level as their teammate, despite having fundamentally similar pace. You can see how quick Matthias Lauda is going, for example, 1.5 seconds quicker on the a couple of laps ago than Laurens Vanthoor. He's lapping in the low 49s, which isn't too much slower than his teammate, but things just don't seem to pan out in the race for the second Vita for One Racing Team BMW squad. They come through turn 10, up into 11 and 12. Laurens Vanthoor, another driver who takes the Jelmer Berman line, if you will, on the taking it wider into the right-hander. I wonder if that's a single-seater line, because Berman and Vanthoor are both very fresh out of single-seaters. So I wonder if that's a little nuance there between the different lines the drivers take. Vanthoor, very successful at Macau, finished 2nd at the Macau F3 GP a couple of years ago, so certainly a very, very quick driver. We've seen him win the opening round of the season in Nogaro along with Stefano Telli. He'll need to be on his best behaviour now, because here comes Nicky Meyer-Melnoff out of the final corner. Very, very close as they come across the start-finish line. Vanthoor goes very, very defensive. Meyer-Melnoff's got the outside line. He hasn't quite got enough straight line speed advantage. He might fancy doing it on the brakes. Vanthoor keeps it in there. They both go very wide, and neither of them are going to get penalised, because neither of them gained an advantage, really, or the advantage they gained was equal. Looks as though Vanthoor was out of shape a little bit, under braking before turn 1 as all the turf gets kicked up on the outside of the corner. There's Matthias Lauda drinking water on the left-hand side of the screen. He's done the first stint. Vanthoor not troubling the apex down there at the hairpin. This turf must get relayed so many times on the exit of the corner, because every time I'm here it just gets kicked up and ripped to smithereens, and then it's perfectly fresh again for the next race event. Nicky Meermanhoff still trying to get past Laurens Vanthoor then. But here's our race leader, Thomas Jäger. What's the gap like between them? Well, Markus Winkelhock 0.2 of a second quicker on that previous lap than his teammate. The gap is only 1.2 seconds between them. As far as Dusseldorp versus Bartels has ended up, they are now lapping, well actually Steph Dusseldorp lapped a little bit quicker than Michael Bartels on that last lap, so third and fourth position are consolidated just a little bit with 17 minutes to go here in Portimao. Over the crest of the hill and on to complete their 23rd lap of the race comes Thomas Jäger, followed by his teammate Markus Winkelhock. Are we looking at another championship race 1-2? The McLarens managed to do it in Navarra. We saw the Audis do it in Nogaro. Are we going to see the Mercedes do it here in Portimao? Down into turn 1. There you can see just behind Andy Zuber in 8th place with Alvaro Parent fairly close behind, and Parent is lapping about 1/10 of a second quicker per lap. I wonder if there must be some damage, I think, on that second Hexus. Oh, you can see the rear diffuser actually. If we see the back of that Hexus car, you will see, you can't quite see it there because it's in the shadow, but you'll see the diffuser on the rear, I think, is bouncing up and down and all around, which is probably compromising the aerodynamics somewhat. Vanthoor again wide down there at turn 6, having to push very, very hard to try and stay in front. And, well, he's actually been given a warning now, Laurens Vanthoor, for not respecting the track limits. So he needs to calm it down a little bit. He doesn't want to get a drive-through penalty. Over the crest of the hill. And Nicky Meermanhoff quite close enough to do anything about Vanthoor just yet. There's the two differing lines I spoke about a few moments ago. That last lap, in fact, Meermanhoff dropped a couple of tenths of a second back from Vanthoor, and he's had to work it back up again. So 15, well, just a tiny bit under 16 minutes to go here. And we're watching the battle over 6th position. Laurens Vanthoor holding it at the moment. Him and Stefano Telli led the championship after Nogaro, but they've slowly slipped down since then. And they now find themselves in 4th place in the championship, but only 2 points ahead of Nicky Pastorelli and Thomas Jäger. And if Thomas Jäger and Nicky Pastorelli take the win this afternoon, that will certainly see them move up a couple of positions. And Alvaro Parent has got past, so Alvaro Parent passed Andy Zuber and is now up into 8th position. So that Porsche still struggling just a little bit on the downshifts, as we examined earlier on our onboard with Mike Parisi, so it's not getting any better this weekend for Andy Zuber. He should be able to, well, Stefan Racina actually behind him is lapping 1.4 seconds quicker. We're about to see how he gets past. It's coming up into 11 and up the inside into 12. There you go. Easy as you like, really. So a good move from Alvaro Parent. And that is how he took 8th position away from Andy Zuber. So the Portuguese fans, that's down at the grandstand overlooking the hairpin, will have enjoyed seeing that one on the big screens around the circuit. And now Alvaro Parent will begin to pull away. 6 seconds behind Nicky Meermanhoff and Laurens Vanthoor. There's a chance he may be able to close that in. Fastest lap of the race, Peter Cox, 47.134 on lap 23. So that previous tour, Peter Cox set the fastest lap of the race. That's pretty impressive, actually, considering he's had new tyres for a reasonable amount of time now, Cox. He's 4.3 seconds behind the Bartels-Dusseldorp battle, so... And I don't think he's lapping quickly enough to close in on them. No, only about 2 or 3 tenths of a second. There's our top 4. There's Peter Cox cresting the hill in the white Lamborghini. So I don't think he's going to be quite quick enough to catch up with Michael Bartels, but many a time this season we've seen Peter Cox set fastest laps of the race, but Lamborghini's not been able to quite sort it out and pick up the positions that it really deserves. I don't think Router haven't had a podium so far this year, despite having excellent pace. Well, Albert von Thurn and Taxis and Thomas Jäger finished third in the opening qualifying race, didn't they, at Nogaro? But apart from that, I don't think we've seen any of them on the podium. Down towards turn 6. Bartel's in 4th, Cox in 5th, as you can see there, 7.9 seconds off the lead for Peter Cox. And the lead is currently being held by Thomas Jäger. Van Thor and Meyer Melnhoff still engrossed in this battle. Meyer Melnhoff takes a couple of tenths out of Van Thor, but then once he gets up behind, he can't find it the way past, and will then to begin to drop back again. And equally, Alvaro Parent is half a second a lap quicker, but some 5.6 seconds behind. So it's going to be tough work for Alvaro Parent to close in on these two. So I think Parent's maximum may well be 8th position. Lawrence Van Thor still receiving a warning for not respecting the track limits. Personal best lap last time around for Markus Winkelhock, 1 minute 47.259, but this lap was a bit slower, 1 minute 7.589, so the gap came down a little bit and then went up a little bit. The gap up to 1.5 seconds now between the two leaders. Dusseldorp 2.3 seconds behind, 0.6 of a second a lap slower. Berman brought the gap down on that last lap by 0.4 of a second, so Dusseldorp and Bartels are now only separated by 0.4 overall in the battle for the final podium position. Oh, big slide from Lawrence Van Thor, out of shape under braking before. This could be the opportunity for Nicky Melnhoff, because that's allowed him to get right up close behind. He runs out very wide onto the AstroTurf. Will he try and find the inside line on the run down into 6? Or does he decide to stick it towards the outside? The outside is his plan, and then get the cutback. Van Thor for once gets the car stopped in time down there at the hairpin. He's been struggling to do that so far in this race. But Nicky Melnhoff just not quite able to make a move or to find an opportunity. Here's the replay. Back end steps out just about there. Nice stuff from Lawrence Van Thor, leaving a trail of rubber down on the circuit. And well, it's been a story of that 17 BMW's race, hasn't it? Getting stuck behind cars that they should be able to get past, but just quite haven't been able to. Matthias Lauda was stuck behind Enzo Ede, and now Nicky Melnhoff stuck behind Lawrence Van Thor. There is Lauda. And he's not looking particularly delighted with how this race is going, and now Nicky Melnhoff has been given the warning for track limits, and off that's Stefan Racina. And he's rejoining the circuit, so maybe that was just a little off for him. That's at turn 8 and 9. It's turn 8 and 9, so he's going pretty slowly up the hill. We'll wait and see how things develop for Stefan Racina. That would be a shame, because he was in 10th place in the final point scoring position. And that's the McLaren. It's Alvaro Parent. It's Alvaro Parent, I think, from the helmet. We'll have to wait for confirmation, but the helmet looks like Alvaro Parent, and yes, it is Alvaro Parent. So that was nearly dramatic, but in the end it is Alvaro Parent who walks away from his Hexus McLaren from 8th place. So that's a real shame. Real shame. Just when you thought Hexus were getting on top of their reliability issues, Alvaro Parent has had to retire from this race, pulling it off at the top of the hill at 14. It was, I thought for a moment it was going to be Steph Dusseldorp we saw climbing out of that car, but it's the number 2 car of Alvaro Parent. And hopefully that can be covered just under yellow flag, and we won't need to have the safety car out. Another personal best lap that time around for Thomas Jäger in the lead of the race. 1 minute 47.312. And he now extends his gap at the front to 1.8 seconds. I wonder if the Mercedes saw that McLaren stricken by the side of the road and immediately radioed in to check which one it was. But ultimately it isn't the one that they're involved in the championship battle with. Still 0.4 of a second between 3rd and 4th. Here they come. Bartel's still... He's not close enough to do anything about the McLaren. He's not really close enough to put the McLaren under any pressure either, because he's just about matching the pace of the McLaren and not really able to do much more than that. On board we go with Bartels. 8.5 minutes to go here at Portimao. That last lap, the gap is down to just 0.2 of a second, so it keeps chipping down, but then as soon as he gets into the dirty air of that McLaren, it begins to fall away from him again. The dirty air does have an impact, not quite as dramatic as high downforce single-seaters, but definitely there is some effect. Laurens Vanthoor still scrapping it out with Nicky Meyer-Melnhof through turn 3, into turn 4. And a bit of contact there, and Vanthoor goes round. Nicky Meyer-Melnhof trying to take too much speed through the corner, I think. A little tap on the rear of Laurens Vanthoor, does a nice little donut. He's lost out to the Porsche as well of Andy Zuber. And Nicky Meyer-Melnhof then up into 6th place, but rather robustly making that move, I think it's fair to say. So Vanthoor drops down behind Zuber now to 8th position, and I think he'll be a little bit frustrated with that one. Nicky Meyer-Melnhof, those two, of course, had a pretty severe battle at Slovakia last time out. Nicky Meyer-Melnhof forcing Laurens Vanthoor onto the grass. Now, here we go. He doesn't look up the inside, does he? He's just late on the brakes. It's not even a braking issue, it's just a tap mid-corner, so it's one for the stewards. It's one for the stewards, but it's the second time these two have tangled at in the last 2 races. On board with Vanthoor, turns into the corner, almost about to get back on the throttle, and there's the tap. And straight around he goes. At slow speeds like that, it's even more difficult to catch a slide than it is at high speeds. 6.5 minutes remaining. Thomas Jäger leads. Markus Winkelhock in second, but this battle for 3rd place won't go away. It's the Hexis McLaren of Stef Dusseldorf battling Bartels. Let's hear from Hexis actually. I thought Bartels was going to have a look up the inside there, but whilst this Hexis is defending, let's see if we can find out what happened to the other Hexis. Hayley Coxon.
Yeah, hey Jack, I've just had a chat with Gregoire de Messier, and he's told me they suspect it's an engine failure on the McLaren, but they're waiting for Alvaro to get back into the pits to confirm.
Michael Bartels attacking to the outside. Thank you very much for that information, Hayley. But Michael Bartels now is as close as he has been ever, really, to the back of this McLaren. Little dart to the inside line. I wonder if he's just been saving up his tyres for a late attack or something like that, because he's a very canny racer, Michael Bartels. Been racing GT cars for a long time. Had some F1 test drives in his time. Tried to qualify for a few Grand Prix with Lotus back in the day. But he is now right up behind the McLaren. Up in towards turn 12. He sent it very, very wide to try and get the best run out of the corner. It works out for him, but he's not able to quite close in enough. Oh, bit out of shape, wasn't he there? I think he was tempted to have a little look up the inside into 14, but then got out of shape himself, going through the kink at 13. Wide line in. On the power nice and early. Hugs the inside line. This could be a good opportunity here for Bartels. Back on the power, and he's got a good run out now. He might be able to get alongside the McLaren. He's certainly in the slipstream now. Will the McLaren edge clear? Yes, it will, and Bartels has to pull out of the slipstream just a little bit. Across the line they come. 1.5 of a second separating them, but it's not going to be a straightforward move for Bartels, is it? It's not going to be a get a good slipstream up the inside, job done. It's got to be a bit of a cunning manoeuvre. They come up through turn 5. Is Peter Cox closing in on them? Peter Cox closed in on these two by a second on that last lap. Unfortunately, there's 2 seconds between them and only maybe 2 or 3 laps remaining. But Peter Cox might just be able to bring himself into this and, well, drive-through penalty for car number 17, Nicky Meyer-Melnhof, for causing a collision. I doubt there can be many arguments there. So you could hear when we were on board with Laurens Vanthoor, he was just waiting to get back on the power. No apparent deliberate brake testing or anything like that. And the stewards have decided it's a drive-through penalty for Nicky Meyer-Melnhof. That will drop him. He might be able to remain in the points, potentially, but he'll go down to at least 10th position. Will promote Andy Zuber up into 6th place, which I think would delight the Porsche squad, considering the troubles they've had and that I've already mentioned so far today. What can Michael Bartels do? 3.5 minutes to go. And they come across the line. Thomas Jäger and Nicky Pastorelli are looking all set to win this one. This may well be the penultimate lap of the race, I think. But out onto the start-finish straight we come. Bartels is close. McLaren knows it, sticks to the inside line. Bartels can't quite get the momentum he needs to get up alongside. I think it's going to have to be a mistake from Stef Dusseldorp, and mistakes from Stef Dusseldorp are very rare. We go on board with him into the hairpin at 4. Peter Cox on that last lap only took half a second out of the cars in front, so I think it's too late for Peter Cox as some of the AstroTurf goes flying into the air. Yeah, I think it's too late for Peter Cox to really mount a challenge on what is, I believe, the penultimate lap of the race. Does Michael Bartels have anything in reserve? Has he been planning anything for these previous few laps? Or is he simply relying on a mistake from Stef Dusseldorp? Look at how wide a line he takes into 9 to try and use the BMW's traction out of the corner through the kink at 10. Now, we did see him contemplate a move into 14 last lap, but then he got out of shape himself. And as a result, didn't quite have the momentum. And he's not going to be close enough this time around, I don't think. Through 13, and no, not close enough. So 1 minute and 40 seconds to go, so this is the penultimate lap of the race. Thomas Jäger is about to start his final lap of the race for Al Inkel. But Peter Cox is in this, you know. I kept saying he wasn't going to quite close in enough time, but he's not too far away. Thomas Jäger starts the final lap of the race. Is he about to take a 1-2 for Marc Basseng's Münnich Motorsport's AlInkel.com squad? It looks like he may well be able to. The gap is just 1.3 seconds up at the front. The gap is just 1.5 tenths between third and fourth places. Michael Bartels has to do it on this lap if he wants to stand on the podium. But he will, of course, be considering the championship. There's no point going for something crazy and ending up with a penalty or a retirement and picking up no points at all. Up through turn 5. Nicky Mermelnoff, I can hear, is doing his drive-through penalty. Peter Cox is right with these three now. It's a three-way scrap for the final podium position, going down into the hairpin for the final time. Nothing Bartels can do on the exit. But Thomas Jäger has been very, very impressive, actually. He came out just behind his teammate Markus Winkelhock. It looked as though he'd missed the opportunity to get past when Winkelhock was fresh out of the pits on his cold tyres, because, of course, no tyre heating equipment is allowed in FIA GT1. But it looked as though he'd missed his opportunity, but he managed to stick it around the outside down at turn 15. He then managed to attack and get past the McLaren of Stef Dusseldorp with a great move up the inside into turn 7. His teammate, oh, that's Andy Zuber from 6th position. He's out of the race on the final lap. That is really sad news for Porsche. They've had to work so hard this weekend to try and get that car running. They've managed it, but it's not going to make the final lap. This car definitely is going to make the final lap. It's also going to take the victory. There we go on board with Michael Bartels. But it's Thomas Jäger for AlInkel.com Munich Motorsports who sees the checkered flag. It's a 1-2 for Al Inkel in their Mercedes. They become the 5th brand in 5 championship races to win. And look at that. The Lamborghini has passed Michael Bartels on the very final lap. Peter Cox is up into 4th place. So fantastic work from Peter Cox. I wonder if Bartels had a little look at the McLaren on the final lap, because when we went on board with him a few moments ago, he was considerably further behind the McLaren than I would have thought. So I wonder if he's had a lunge, and then Peter Cox has taken advantage of that. But take nothing away from the advantage that Al Inkel will now have at the top of the team's championship. Absolutely commanding it will probably be, having picked up 25 points for the win and 18 points for the 2nd place. And there must have been a few nervy times as So a few nervy times for Al Inkel. So here we go on board with the BMW. And look at that, Peter Cox stuck it around to the outside. There was contact between the pair of them. Bartels presumably then thought he'd held it. And he has held it. We're going into the final corner now. And is Peter Cox going to go up the inside? Into 16 he is. Fantastic stuff. Peter Cox taking it on the final lap. Tried around the outside. In the end, stucking up the inside into turn 16. And Michael Bartels has to finish down in 5th position in the end, with Peter Cox in 4th. An impressive performance from Peter Cox. There's Yoma Berman. A little shrug of the shoulders. They were in contention for the race win, so a 5th place for the championship winners of last time will be disappointment for them, but not a hint of disappointment for these two. Thomas Jäger and Nicky Pastorelli winning the championship race here at Portimao. Markus Winkelhock and Marc Basseng finishing in 2nd place. They're a very proud team, Al Inkel. They always go out of qualifying and any free practice session. They go out 2 by 2 like Braun GP used to back in the good old days. There's our 3rd place finisher, Stef Dusseldorp. And a hard race for him to keep Bartels behind him, which he did manage in the end. Bartels unable to keep Cox behind him. Here's a look at the results then. AlInkel.com. Munich Motorsports 1-2 with their Mercedes-Benzes, the 5th brand winner in 5 championship races. McLaren in 3rd, Fred McAvicky and Stef Dusseldorp. Lamborghini in 4th, Daryl O'Young and Peter Cox. Yama Bermans and Michael Bartels only in 5th position, with Ortelli and Vanthor in 6th place. Enzo Eid and Francesco Castellacci into 7th. 9th place going to the Ford GT of Criseno and Pavlovic. A point at least for Parisi and Zuba after their retirement on the final lap. Demoustier and Parent retired, as did Stefan Rossini. We never found out actually what happened to Stefan Rossini, did we? But he retires from the race. Stippler and Verlander caught up in the opening lap incidents. So the Mercedes pull into the pit lane. There's the podium up there on the right-hand side, awaiting them. And first of all, it will be Haley Coxon awaiting them in the pit lane to have a little chat to them. But I imagine we're going to see a very, very happy team boss, Marc Basseng, in a few moments' time. Perhaps a hint of disappointment that it wasn't his car that won the race. That's always going to be a tricky position for the team boss. But there's Thomas Jäger, driver of the race, really. Some brilliant overtakes, some brilliant pace, and he is very, very happy with that. He and Pastorelli very satisfied. And Al Inkel pick up their 1st championship race win of the season. And there's Markus Winkelhock. So there is Marc Basseng, team boss. Been in a similar position before. Last year in Navarra, when they were in the Lamborghinis, the 38 car won the qualifying race and the 37 car won the championship race. And it's a similar situation this time around. Satisfaction, I think, for Hexis. They weren't expecting to be very, very quick here. Certainly not really challenging for podiums. They were hoping to get a top 10, and that would just about do. But Stef Dusseldorp and Fred McAvicky bringing the car home in 3rd position. Excellent work from them. And kisses all round at the French team. Different story, though, for the 2nd Hexis McLaren. That's a sight we're seeing less and less of, a broken down McLaren. They're really starting to get to grips with the car now at Hexis, along with McLaren's support. And it's great to see the car regularly finishing towards the front of the field and battling hard. So let's hear from Thomas Jäger and Nicky Pastorelli, winners of the championship race this afternoon here at Portimao.
Congratulations, Thomas. What a win, and 1-2 for the team.
Yeah, great. I'm really excited because it was such a tough fight we've seen after the pit stop. So our car was fantastic. That's why I could overtake the other twos. So yeah, my teammate Nicky made a great job. The car was excellent, as I said, very consistent. So it's a great 1st win with the SLS AMG in the GT1 World Championship. So we are all very happy.
Certainly has been the track for the Mercedes here this weekend, hasn't it, Nicky?
Definitely, and apart from being the track for the Mercedes, everything also finally came together, so it couldn't be better. 1st place for us, which we are really happy with, and 2nd place also for the other car, so perfect weekend.
Thank you, guys.
So congratulations to Nicky Pastorelli and Thomas Jäger. So Jäger just telling how much time he lost when he came out of the pits trying to get past Markus Winkelhock. 3 seconds and 2 seconds in the laps, he reckons, and so that is why, if they hadn't have been battling, they would have cleared the McLaren easily. But I'm glad they didn't, because it made it a lot more entertaining for us watching them trying to fight their way past. Let's hear from Marc Basseng and Markus Winkelhock, second place. Let's hear from Markus first. He's down in the pit lane with Haley.
Markus, there was certainly some fantastic racing there between yourself and the sister car. How was it for you racing out there today?
Yeah, it was a shit race actually.
Excuse me, apologies for the swearing.
Yeah, coming from pole position, finishing second is not the best. For sure we scored some important points, but I'm not happy with the race, absolutely not. The team did a good job, good pit stop. Unfortunately the car didn't start immediately because the ignition switch wasn't on immediately, but yeah, I'm not happy yet.
Thank you. Marc, despite Marcus's disappointment, it is a great result for the team. Finally, both of you back on the podium.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I can understand Markus. I mean, he's now full of adrenaline and everything, that's normal. And me, I'm also something like that. No, it's the best day for us, for Münnich Motorsport, or Inkel.com, with Mercedes, the first double victory in the GT1 World Championship this year. Great team effort. The team points are tremendously better after this result. I'm absolutely happy with the result, and thank to all of our team members and people who support us.
Thank you, guys.
So Markus Winkelhock obviously very frustrated, and we apologise for the language, but a different tale of two opinions there, really, wasn't it? Markus Winkelhock frustrated as the racing driver not to win. Marc Basseng frustrated as the racing driver not to win, but delighted nevertheless to have a 1-2 for his team. Let's hear from the third place finishers, Makovic and Dusseldorp.
Congratulations, Steph. You started on third, and here you are finishing third on the podium.
Actually, we started on 4, but Fred had an amazing start. He made me a little bit nervous in the first corner, but yeah, he did an amazing stint. Really close with the first four cars. The team did a normal pit stop, not really fast, but I exited the pit lane first, but the Mercedes is just too fast for us, and had to settle for third. The last few minutes was a hard fight to keep the BMW behind, but I'm glad we made it, and another podium finish is really important.
And a great performance by yourself once again in the McLaren. Fred, have you enjoyed racing here this weekend?
Yeah, sure, it's great. In the perspective of the championship, it's really good for us. We take a lot of points, and we're coming back a little bit on the BMW, but maybe the Mercedes pass us. But well, it's like this. We can't be really happy. We know that on this track it was tricky for us, and congratulations, the team. They did again a really nice job.
Thank you.
So third place for Hexis McLaren. They seem pretty satisfied with that, as I say. Coming into this weekend, they weren't expecting anything like that. Driver of car 25 to the race director, that is Peter Cox, so that'll be an interesting one to see. Here's a look at how it affects the championship standings then. Michael Bartels and Jelmer Berman still at the top of the championship, but look at that, only 5 points now ahead of Marc Basseng and Markus Winkelhock, who are only 1 point ahead of Steph Dusseldorp and Fred Makovic. Thomas Jäger and Nicky Pastorelli have almost brought themselves into contention for the top of the championship with that win. Ortelli and Van Thorp, Philippe Salaquada and Tony Verlander complete 5th and 6th positions. So that's how it's going to work out as far as the team's championship is concerned. Al Inkel, unsurprisingly, top of the championship. Vita for One are now in 2nd place after hardly picking up any points in the opening couple of races. They're really on it now. Hexis Racing and WRT still very closely matched. AF Corsa in 5th place. Sunred yesterday picked up 2 points for their first points of the season, but unfortunately they couldn't, well, they picked up another point actually today, didn't they? They picked up a point yesterday and a couple of points today, so Milos Pavlovic, good news for them. So there onto the podium come Thomas Jäger and Nicky Pastorelli, absolutely delighted as you'd imagine. Onto the podium, here comes Marc Basseng and Markus Winkelhock. Basseng satisfied, Winkelhock frustrated, but I think after an hour or so he'll realise that 2nd place isn't all that bad. Fred Makovic and Steph Dusseldorp on the 3rd step of the podium. It was a battle of the German brands off the front row. Mercedes versus BMW. It was Mercedes that were victorious, along with the German team of Al-Inkle. So congratulations to our top 3 drivers, well, top 6 drivers I should say, and Nicky Pastorelli and Thomas Jäger taking their first win of the season and the first win for Al-Inkle. The third place trophies then for Dusseldorp and Makovici. Miguel Jaime Silva, the president of the AIA Motor Club, presenting them with their trophies. Dusseldorp examining it, seems fairly satisfied with that one to add to his collection that he picked up, a handful in Navarra. There's Nuno Sequeira, commercial director here at the Autódromo Internacional de Algarve. Another fantastic venue for FIA GT1. We've been coming here for a couple of years now, and once again it's been an entertaining race. Luis Pinto Freitas, chairman of the board of directors of FPAC, presents the winners with their trophies, and then the team's trophy as well, handed to the Al-Inkle representative. Congratulations to our top 3 finishers, Jäger and Pastorelli, winning the race. It was an action-packed race, and now the champagne is about to spray on the top step. Al-Inkle very much spraying each other, leaving Hexis to do what they want. And Markus Winkelhock's cheered up a bit now the champagne's out to be sprayed, isn't it? As he coats Marc Basseng. Need to get those overalls in the wash as soon as possible. But it's a fantastic weekend for Al-Inkle. First place in the qualifying race, first and second in the championship race, and this really, moving on to the remainder of the season, has cemented their place as firm title favourites. And the fear for the rest of the field has to be that they were top of the championship without having won a race, but now they have won a race. They're going to be even harder to beat up there, but Hexis will have something to say about that. I think the V1 racing team will as well. So Marc Basseng started off his weekend by driving me around the circuit in the safety car. Perhaps he should do that every weekend, because it obviously brings him some good luck. He has ended the weekend with a 1-2 for his team. So let's have a look back at what was a very, very entertaining GT1 race, the 5th round of the championship here at Portimao. So at the start of the race, the McLaren looked pretty aggressive towards the outside line, but it was Marc Basseng who just about held on. Had a bit of contact in the middle of the pack. There you can see, just towards the outside line, the Ferrari getting involved, the Audi getting involved, and the Ford GT getting involved as well. Frank Stippler got a rear right puncture and was out of the race. Tony Verlander got damage to his front right and was out of the race as well. The Ford GT made a quick pit stop and then would resume. We had a great 3-way fight for the lead of the race. Marc Basseng just about managing to keep Fred Makovici behind him, despite some pretty decent efforts. Then the pit stop windows came around. Stefano Telli handing over to Laurence Vanthor. And then when Winkelhock came out of the pits, he was put under a lot of pressure from his teammate. And as a result, the McLaren managed to get past both of them. Stef Dusseldorp taking the lead of the race. But it wasn't long before they were going 3 abreast down into the hairpin at turn 6. It was absolutely incredible racing. No positions changed there, but the number 37 car of Thomas Jäger managed to sneak around the outside at turn 15. Brilliant move from him to move up into that 2nd position. And then he managed to get past the race leader as well, past Stef Dusseldorp coming into turn 7. And it wasn't long before his teammate Markus Winkelhock decided he'd have some of that action as well. Looking to the inside into turn 7, almost got squeezed out of it, but Dusseldorp couldn't hang it on around the outside. And as a result, it was then Al-Inkle 1 and 2, Hexis McLaren in 3rd place. That's how it remained for the rest of the race. even though there was plenty of dicing between the top lower positions. Alvaro Parent had to retire the second Hexus McLaren, unfortunately, after running in a strong position. There's also a bit of an incident between Nicky Mermanov, him just gently nerfing Laurens Vanthoor out of the way. He was given a drive-through penalty for that little manoeuvre. And then coming towards the end of the race, Peter Cox really came into his own. He really closed in on the battle for third position. No one could stop Thomas Jäger though. He saw the checker flag and took it, and it was a 1-2 for Al Inkel, consolidating their lead at the top of the team's championship and moving both of them into strong positions in the Drivers' Championship. Peter Cox forced his way through on the very final corner of the race up into fourth place, but now has to report to the race director, so what will become of that? We will have to wait and see. Thank you very much for joining us this weekend. From myself, Jack Nicholls, and Hayley Coxon down in the pit lane. We'll see you next time after a great weekend for Al Inkel.